Hello, everybody, and welcome to the NTPA Recap Show with Dom Santina and John Dunlap. The last poll of the NTPA Grand National regular season wrapped up in Sandwich, Illinois this last weekend, and we named 5 more NTPA Grand National champions over 3 sessions. So, John, with that getting started, why don't we start with session number 1, and we'll start with our final truck class that had to finish up this last weekend. And points leader Justin Gearhart, man, he put a statement on the field in session number 1 as he pulled his cream of the crop truck to 360.33 feet, just ahead of Van Hazley, who would round out the class and slot himself into second with 355. And Todd Dugan and the Angry Farmer penetrating spray truck would finish third with 352, just pulling a couple hooks ahead of Justin Gearhart. Todd Dugan and his other Angry Shine truck would finish in fourth to round out the class.
Really exciting performance for Justin Gearhart. We talked about that a few weeks ago, that he has had good luck at Sandwich before. He won a few years ago to nab the 5th Enderly slot when he had to win. About his only option for getting that slot was to win the class, and he went out and did it. And it wasn't his only option on Thursday night to win the class, to win the division, but it certainly helped. It definitely settled any tiebreaker issues and put up a 5-point advantage, as it turned out, on Angry Shine, the Todd Dugan machine, which had led for a good part of the latter half of the season. It was kind of steady improvement for Justin. He had run well for a good chunk of the season, but was kind of buried behind the 2 Angry Farmer trucks because they simply ran better. But he seized his opportunity in Bowling Green. He got a third, while Dugan's 2 rides both struggled on Friday afternoon, and that was pretty much all she wrote. Justin just had to hold him off after that point.
Yeah, it was a good day for him, and I talked to him after the poll, and nothing really too specific. It kind of, as the class went along, guys kept out pulling each other until the end, and he just found a good line, hooked it up well, and had a good day for himself. And best way to lock up the championship is taking the class yourself.
Yep. There are some guys that the pressure really gets to, and we saw that. Maybe that's too far of a bridge to cross, but there are situations in which leads are hard to protect and leads are easy to protect. And it seemed like Justin had all the momentum going for him, and his lead was easier to protect than, say, we saw at Wasion last weekend, where some things overturned. That was not going to happen to Justin at Sandwich. He had his ducks in a row and was able to get it done.
All right, and another championship that was pretty tight and had to be decided in the final 2 hooks of the season was a Superstock Diesel Tractor class. And in session number 1, Mike Beck and High Tech Redneck would play a little bit spoiler as he would take the win. Stan Blagrave and Red Horse in second, and Esden Lane and Redline Fever in third. Notable here in this session, in 5th was Travis Schlaba and Bone Twister, and in 6th, Kent Payne of Super Rooster, and they were within half a foot of each other, both of them at about 86 feet.
You know you're living right when an 86-foot hook gains you a point in the standings. We also saw from that afternoon the sort of a what could have been, or the glimpse of the glory that Mike Beck could have added to the season all the way through. I saw in a lot of cases this year in which there were subpar runs, but there weren't those typical second-day scratches that this class has fallen victim to. So we certainly appreciate seeing them for 2 days. But there were enough cases in which Mike or another of the non-winners was sort of under the weather. And you sort of saw when Mike had all of his stuff together, what that tractor is capable of doing. It really put it on him there on Saturday afternoon. Good to see. Good, a nice something to build on for next year.
Yeah, and I talked to you about this before we started recording, but very, very close situation for Schlabaz. He had a pass that went 87 feet, decided to take it back because he was within the 100-foot rule, so he could go back and try again, and comes up 86 feet, just half a foot ahead of Kent Payne, which pretty much locked up the championship at that point in session number 2. But had it gone the other way, might have opened the door for Kent Payne, because in session number 3, Kent Payne and Super Rooster would take the win with 347 feet. Stan Blagrave and Red Horse would come again in second place with 337. And Travis Slaba would round out the podium, and Bone Twister with 316 feet.
Yeah, that roll of the dice that you were privy to being in the trailer and on the radio, and those of us watching at home were not as privy to, but might have guessed what was happening. That would have been a 2-point swing, and it wound up being a 3-point margin. So it certainly could have tightened things up for the evening. Who knows how the evening plays out if Travis has to be a lot more aggressive to protect a diminished lead versus able to stay defensive, and third place was good enough. We did have an entry in the second session, Chris Kane jumping in from Pro Stock, that was not in the first session, and that actually made the arithmetic a little bit more complicated. Else we would have not had enough points trackers for Kent to have overcome Travis that night. As it turns out there were, but it didn't matter because Travis kept it close enough. And again, just the same as I said with Mike Beck, Kent Payne laid down the kind of run that you say, okay, that's something to build on for next year, and we will have a competition. And Steve Burge and Tabitha DeMars both shot out of the win column this year, but we saw nothing but promise from Tabitha for sure down the stretch. And we know Steve is a winner, he's a 2-time champion. Just a matter of an off year, and I think they come back around next year, and it could be really a 5-way fight. We love, and more than that, if Esden continues to run the circuit all the way through, it could be more than a 5-way fight next year. We'd sure love to see it.
I don't remember if it was session 2 or session 3. Tabitha had a kind of a wild ride. Tractor got hooked up a little weird and went for a little bit of a ride. Tractor bucked a little bit. And
yeah, Larry's remark on the live stream, I recall, was, hey, Jeff, meaning Tabitha's dad, Jeff DeMars, that track's a little bit better than the last time you hooked a sandwich. And he said it for God and everybody to hear, but it probably is true. It was a better, a big tire track, I think, than it had been in previous years. I think Jim Miller knows enough. Well, the name says it all. I don't need to finish the sentence. But there's a truck night track and there's a tractor day track, and Jim knows how to build both. So I think that's probably the case, is you had a tractor type track, plus with the able assistance of all the sandwich folks out there, laying things down as well. But just a great afternoon of pulling on a very good surface, very reliable surface. And I think it was just a little bit too much bite for Tabitha to be able to handle.
Yeah, I think we talked about this. The broadcast might have cut off by this point, but in the interviews with the champions afterwards and kind of just the consensus around the pit is that might have been the best track that's ever been made in Sandwich. Everyone seemed to like it. It was a great show through all 5 classes plus a couple regional classes, and everyone was very pleased with the track in Sandwich this last weekend.
Yeah, you mentioned also that the live stream had cut off before Travis Slaubaugh gave his basically victory address, and what a gracious winner he is, and very thankful to everyone who helped him over the course of the season as he kind of went through his list of thank yous, and that's what we found him to be here as well. And as it turns out, he will be helping us with our VIP contest winners in the Case IH NTPA Superfan Sweepstakes. Of course, the grand prizes, the first of the grand prizes that have been drawn, are tickets to the Enderly and a VIP experience. And so Travis, among some others, will help us welcome those fine folks to Enderly and to the Champaign County Fairgrounds and give them a nice time and a memorable experience.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, John, once again before we were recording, but you said about how this group really comes together, and they all have kind of the same Farmall 1066 tractors, and so they know how they work, but they come together even though there's 5 or 6 of them and work together. And I think Travis said in his interview he had pieces from Kent Payne, he had pieces from Mike Beck, and I think even Rob Russell had lended him a couple parts to help him keep that tractor together. So just shows you how even though they're competitors, they still want to make sure everyone gets out to the track and have a good competition.
It's no secret to the world that diesel superstocks are a bit of an endangered species. And so I think the word brotherhood is probably not overused in this context, is that you really have guys who are dedicated to that class. They love it. They want to run it. They want to keep it alive. They know it takes more than one to put a good show on, and they are determined to help each other as much as they can until that green flag flies.
All right, let's move on to our super farm class. In session number 1, it would be Brad Hart and Don't Ask. Or in session number 2, it would be Brad Hart and Don't Ask taking the overall win for the session. And then it would be Gage Ott and Dream On in second with 323 feet, just 5 feet behind Hart. And Dave Whelan in My Last Excuse taking the win very close behind at 323.76, about 10th behind Gage Ott in session 2. In session 3, it would be Ott taking the win on Dream On, followed by Mark Miller and Digging Deep, and Brad Hart and Don't Ask. So a couple guys getting up there on the podium twice. But overall, Ryan Anderson would finish fourth in session number 4 and fifth in session number 5, and coming in with a pretty good points gap in the championship already would let him secure the Grand National Championship.
Yeah, this is a clear case of just enough is plenty. And what we had there with Ryan Anderson, he sort of knew what he needed to do, not have a bad and breakage-filled outing on Saturday afternoon and then just defend, and that's exactly what he accomplished. He did what he needed to do the previous week in Hoopston, putting down a 30-point performance there in one of the sessions, and so that allowed him to play from ahead. Good, though, on Gage Ott and making it interesting down the stretch there as well, and I think that Mod Puller from Lincoln, Nebraska ought to have, Norfolk, Nebraska, ought to have some opportunities on that tractor next year. I think Brian will definitely trust him with it. And also Brad Hart, nice to see him. He doesn't go with us everywhere we pull Super Farm, but when he does, he comes to pull, and he had that win this season and 3/3. So finished up a pretty nice year in his limited campaign.
Yeah, good to see some guys mixing it up, and maybe Ryan Anderson might have some more competition heading into 2022.
Always in that class. You never get a big lead in that class. In fact, the 11-point margin at the end is a little bit astonishing. But Ryan was just so consistent all year long that as others had some difficulties, he was able to steer between them. But as far as you've seen the distances on the track and the points finishes, that class is just close by nature. They're just so tight as far as horsepower is concerned and the construction of the vehicles on cubic inches and everything. They're very similar rides. And so as you go into next year, I would guarantee you'd have 3 or 4 contenders besides Ryan.
All right, well, we'll move on to our modified class, and Brett Berg came in with the points championship, and he maximized his opportunities on the weekend. Starting in session number 2, he would take his Moneymaker tractor to the win with 338 feet, a full 20 feet ahead of Tom Owens and Ramblin' Rose with 317, and Renee Theobald in full-blown wicked to round out the podium at 295. Now, in session number 3, it would be Berg again taking the win with an amazing 371 feet. Tom Owens again finishing second at 369. And then in third place would be Jeff Rose and Giddy Up with 337 and 7. So Berg coming in with the championship lead, getting a perfect points day with the 2 sessions in one day, definitely helped him clinch the championship.
From start to finish this year, you saw what a crafty veteran can do with good equipment, and that is just simply dominate. He had 7 wins over the course of the year, and nobody else had more than 2. So that's Brett Berg for you in a nutshell. But if you want to just talk about from a competitive standpoint, is this class going to be competitive in the future? And I have to look at Tom Owens, and closing the gap from 20 feet to 2 from afternoon to evening, right there is a fast learner. And that win in Rockwell, he'll know what that feeling is all this offseason, and he will build on that. And, of course, there's still the Enderly this Saturday to talk about, and he'll be invited to that as well. So I would say that Brett may have something to look over his shoulder at there in the Owens family from New York. I would also say Doug Christensen had a very reputable year there on his dad's ride, and Jeff did a fine job piloting Giddy Up among all of the engine issues that they had in Mod and Unlimited this season. Jeff did a very capable job in finishing third to Brett. And then Corey Kielmeyer, big thing there was he missed Dodge City, so he winds up 85 points back. But that tractor, I wouldn't sleep on it coming this Saturday. 1 run and done. I'd say Corey is definitely in range of challenging Brett for that trophy, and then come back next year with 3 on and chase Brett all season long. Brett may have a wide margin right now that can shrink awfully fast, giving the guys chasing him.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, John. And it's not like the distances were considerably less in session number 3. Actually, they were further than they were in session number 2. And so a 20-2, that's a 18 feet difference in the results is huge. So definitely might be one to watch heading into next season, Tom Owens and Ramblin' Rose, if he can challenge for a championship.
Yeah, just little tweaks, like air pressure and tires, like weight distribution on the tractor, like lane choice, things you notice about a track. Of course, they switched tracks from, I forget if it was from grandstand to infield or infield to grandstand. I have to go back and look at the video, but they changed tracks at Sandwich. So it wasn't on the exact same dirt surface, but maybe that agreed with Tom a little bit better. Hard to say all the variables that were involved, but I would say definitely an improvement and just the evidence of the quick learning capability that you have to have in the sport from night to night, or in this case, hour to hour.
Yeah, I think it was grandstand to infield, but not positive. It really didn't make that much of a difference. But
yeah, they're more the same in between. So
yeah, they put some good passes down on each track, regardless.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll move on to our final class of our session here and the session of 2 and 3 in Sandwich, and that was the Pro Stock class. Rob Russell came in to the weekend with a pretty comfortable lead heading in, and he would only continue that in session number 2. He would take the win with his Workhorse Pro International with a 368-foot pass. But right behind him was Kevin Smucker in Rampage, who put in a good challenge at 366.4 feet. And Nick McCormick in Nasty Stuff would round out the podium at 356.2 in session number 2. Now moving on to session number 3, Kevin Smucker and the New Generation Plus would take the win with 355.3. Danny Smucker and Rampage would finish second with 353. And then taking another podium finish, Mr. Consistent and locking up the championship, Rob Russell would finish in third with 351 feet in session number 3. And I believe, if I go back and look here, Mike Connie was 6th in session number 2. And I didn't look to see where he was in session number 3. But first and a third, with already a big points gap, made it pretty easy for you, John, back there in the office.
Yeah, that was one I did not have to sweat that one out too much. We'll talk about Rob Russell at some length in a minute, but I want to just make sure the Facebook folks aren't just throwing tomatoes at their screen saying, Kevin Schmucker doesn't drive Rampage. No, he did that afternoon. Kevin Schmucker doesn't drive New Generation Plus. Robbie Lemke. No, he actually drove for the Lemke. So correct on both. And it also showed the Schmucker family's versatility, is they can get into a ride they haven't driven in some time, and they can get into a ride they may have never driven before. I'm not sure Kevin has ever driven for Robbie Nesden before, but he got in there and did a fine job there on Saturday night. And again, as we talked about for so many other people, something nice to build on, although Danny had a pretty good year. In third place with all the pressure that Rob Russell and then Mike Connie and Julia Ray put on for him to finish third amidst those guys. Really strong effort there. But old Kevin, I hate to keep using the phrase, don't sleep on him either. He'll jump up and bite you, and he'll get a win you didn't expect to see on equipment you didn't expect to see him on. Back to Rob, though, just closed it out. Just simply, he's a closer. You just do what you have to do, and a first and a third or a third and a fifth would have been enough, but why not win? If you're going to go points poll and get them all, I say. And he went out and did that Saturday afternoon, and that took whatever remaining pressure there was, just took the air out of the sails of anybody who was going to try to catch him. Yeah,
he locked it up pretty much after. I think you texted me and said he just had to basically hook to the sled, and it was over in session number 3. So,
yep.
Or at least enter, maybe even. It might have even been that minimal. So.
Yep. And selfishly, I will say it's fun to not sweat them out, but I would also say we obviously want to bring the best points races to you folks. And so it was also fun having to actually count points in some other divisions this year. Certainly two-wheel drive came down really close. We had to do some quick counting there in four-wheel drive and mini at Wasion last week, two-wheel drive at Hoopston last week. So there were some tight races, no question about it. But an easy one, I don't mind a softball once in a while when I'm the guy who has to give the answer.
Oh, and you have 13 different classes. There's for sure going to be some tight ones and some big gaps throughout the classes.
But I must admit I'm too lazy. Maybe I'll have for you next week or our next video together what Rob Russell's margins might have been, if I can even find that information, in his 3 previous Superstock championships. They would have been in 87, 89, and 93, I want to say, for Mr. Russell. And I wonder if he ever had that big a gap. Because in those days, they were largely diesel classes. Alcohol was just kind of still getting going and unreliable to a large extent. 93 would be different. Alcohol was pretty well established, Connor Brothers and those folks by then. But I wonder if Rob had ever had that kind of margin before going into the last hook, if he even knew how to deal with it. He certainly did. Did know how to deal with it that night.
Best way to not worry about anything is putting your tractor up on the podium, and that's exactly what he did.
Yep. Yep, nobody can touch you then.
So, all right, well, that wraps up all of our championships that have been decided, and it leaves one more Grand National poll left to go in the season. Regional action, Grand National action, all set to take place here in Urbana this weekend with the Enderle poll.
I want to encourage anybody who is just not sure what this whole Enderle thing is about to at least stream it, give it a chance. The biggest thing with that poll is a lot of folks will say, well, the classes are so small. Yes, but there's a fair number of them. In other words, there are 21 of them this year, 12 in the Grand National, the late half session, we could call it, and 9 on the regional level. And they will start the show at 5 p.m. with an intermission in between. And so while you might only have a few of each, you will have the best of the best from all season long. In the case of the regionals, they are all guys who have won some circuit someplace. In a few cases, it's a full region championship. In other cases, it's a portion of a region, but they all were the top point earners across some set of events predefined. And so they chased this all year long, and they got there. And that is worthy of congratulations. And it's just a great night of polling. And then, of course, we talked at length about what it's taken to get on the Grand National side. That is to finish top 5. And we have a few substitutions, a few surprises that folks will find out about later this week on who's driving for whom and who's substituting for whom. But it should be an excellent show full of 102 vehicles beginning at 5 p.m. And we will race that through about as fast as anybody can imagine. I kind of joke it's the Enderly pull-off, but I consider it the Enderly pull-off as we go through it so fast. It's an all-star crew as well as all-star pullers. And we have to slow ourselves down, frankly. Is that everybody in their job has done their job before, and I think it's as well run a show as you'll find in the country.
Yeah, so top 5 in points for Grand National, and then in total there'll be 42 regional pullers coming. That session starts at 5, and then the Grand National session starts around 7 o'clock. I know Matt said there's going to be a little bit of a break in between for awards and stuff like that before we get going. So
yeah, one of the biggest thrills of the year is to watch the regional guys get the big check, because they don't get to see that an awful lot at their regional events. So they'll get that's the big trophy. And it'll be handed out to them on a stand on a concrete pad in front of the main grandstand with their vehicle dragged across it. All of the 5 get honored with their individual checks that night, but the winner of each of the Enderly classes will be pulled. Their vehicle will be pulled on and pictures taken, and it is a big to-do. We run the pictures in the magazine all year long. We use them for promotional purposes, and it's a real thrill. I would also say, somewhat selfishly, if you like the kind of analysis that you get here in our videos, I will be doing an Enderly pre-show. I call it the Road to the Enderly Traffic Report, and that will be getting going at about 4 o'clock in the or from the tower, but broadcast to the grandstand. So if you are coming to the Enderly, I don't believe it'll be part of the stream, but if you're coming to Enderly and wish to hear how each of the participants qualified for the Enderly, I will be going into some length about how that happened. It'll be about a 20-minute broadcast, and so I encourage you to stop by.
Good pre-show entertainment for you before we get rolling with the night show. So.
Yep, yeah, that'll be going about 4 o'clock right until 4:20. We'll give you a little bit of break from the PA beating your ears, and then we'll get into opening ceremonies there, probably about 4:30 or so, and first hook drops at 5 p.m. sharp.
And that also can be live streamed on NTPA.tv as well.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, that's 5 o'clock Eastern, so Central folks, that's 4 p.m. So make sure you're tuning in at the right time. And it has typically been about a little less than a 4-hour show, including fairly significant intermission, because it takes some time to award 9 guys their big trophies and to drag all the vehicles across. So I would say you could reliably expect that one to be finished up by about 9 p.m. Eastern. That's about when we've wrapped it up in the past.
Not bad, not bad. So it'll be fun to watch for sure. Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah,
well,
it's. I will say, I'll go ahead and say it. It has become my favorite single session of the year. I have favorites, which I won't mention, from other events for multi-sessions and just the pageantry involved in so many of them, and those are traditional favorites. But if you want to take a person to a tractor pull to show them what it's about and have them find a favorite driver or a favorite type of vehicle, the Enderle is your smorgasbord of pulling. So it's a great opportunity there.
All right. John, anything else before we wrap it up here?
I don't know. I can't stump for it any harder. If you want to listen to a post Enderly report next couple of weeks, I'll be doing that on the overnight raider reports. They're available for download at ntpapull.com, or they'll be part of the Steve Summers overnight drive program, probably Monday nights or Tuesday nights, and then some other later night in the week whenever they have time to run them. But it's about a 3.5-minute encapsulation of the previous week. I've been doing those all season long, and the next couple will be focused on Enderly, so something else to listen to.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up. We look forward to seeing everybody that can make it out to Enderle. If not, we look forward to everyone joining us on the stream at ntpa.tv. It's going to wrap it up for another episode of the NTPA recap. Thanks, everybody, for watching.